Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of our August 80s movie tribute themed YHB TVs. I'm your host, Sharon Fain, along with here Isaac Watson, my crafty partner in maker crime. We are both the directors of Academy of Handmade, a organization which looks to help you in your business and also create community for your business. Yeah, I'm doing this without reading my usual script, so I'm just winging it here, guys. We are dedicated to helping you navigate all things hashtag maker life. And this week we have our topic is Labyrinth, after the David Bowie 80s classic. If you're not familiar with it, I mean, I guess it's better to watch it as an adult because kind of as a child it scared me a little. I'm not gonna lie. Really, when you look back at the 80s and what they thought was like cool for children, you're like, dang, they really did let us grow up like real weird.
Did you ever see Adventures in Babysitting?
Yes.
That was horrifying.
Yeah. And also the redo of like Alice Through the Looking Glass, the other Alice in Wonderland, where like, yeah, like Phyllis Diller was in it. Man, there's just like when you go back and you're like, things that I like watched in the 80s that I just like took for granted as a child, and you're like, man, would I have a kid today watch this? I don't know. Anyways, we didn't have Dora the Explorer. We did have David Bowie as a Goblin King. So, but yes, so our Labyrinth as makers with our own Goblin Kings is navigating customer service. So I'm sure you can relate. It's kind of tricky to know all the right answers, it feels like, in customer service, because I think there's so many different variables that come up, and each situation can be pretty unique, and you feel like you're kind of almost like remaking the rules every time you like go to apply them to someone. So anyways, we are talking about that today. Before we begin, I'd like to let you know that this episode of YHB TV is brought to you by Jumpstart Your Handmade Business. This is our signature evergreen program. Isaac and I have met thousands of makers over the years, and we have noticed that there tends to be one major thing that makes it hard to progress in your business, which is having clarity and understanding where you're going. So that is why we created Jumpstart. It is a self-guided program that helps you understand the big picture of your business by setting goals, knowing your numbers, and honing in on the right resources for your right solution. You can learn more by clicking on the link below or going to academyofhandmade.com/jumpstart. So excited about this program, and we have some revamps coming to it, which if you get in on it now, you still get all of them. So definitely consider taking the plunge if you feel like you've been kind of stuck in your business, or like you had a weird summer and aren't sure what to do next as the holidays approach. We're definitely here to first off, Isaac, we did this last week, and I think we should maybe do it again this week, but your thoughts on the second week of making it, which features our very own Robert Mahar, who we already crowned the master maker a couple years ago through the Academy of Handmade Awards. And so if NBC does it, I just want to say we did it first. So
yeah, in fact, I don't even know why he's contesting, because
no. He's already been awarded this. He should be a judge.
Come on, people.
He's that amazing. Yeah.
So I actually thought that this last episode was better than the pilot for a couple of reasons. One, I thought Amy and Nick's banter was a little more on point, and I know that not everybody is into the puns, Sharon. But I love the puns, and I just felt like it was a little tighter.
Has dad humor, obviously, like my husband. So
yeah.
To me, it got a little bit like, I've been to this routine before. I know what's coming again, and it's not as interesting to me. To me, the whole show just in general needs to focus more on the makers and their personal stories and what they're making and how they're accomplishing it. And I mean, I think they do kind of a little, but I think as much as you can do that, that's what I want. Like when I watch the Great British Bake Off, I'm not there for Mary and Paul's puns or whoever the new people are. And whatever them trying to be cute. I'm there for the bakers. So
yeah, I was surprised. I felt like they kind of glossed over Robert's Mastercraft project, or sorry, his Fastercraft one, the terrarium. I was like, wait a second, you didn't even talk about it. And
this was amazing. And I just feel like they're not giving him the award every single time because they're like, we just can't give it to you all the time.
I know that this is a major network reality show. It's manufactured drama. It's like, this is, if you've ever watched any number of HGTV shows, it's like the same. There's always a formula to it. And that's just how it goes. But I do, I thought the crafts themselves were interesting, like the challenges. I would have never thought to challenge people to do a fort and a toy. And, you know, I mean, the terrarium thing was cool. It was a nice, fun twist on a terrarium. Also, can we just talk for a minute about how obnoxious Dana is about talking about Etsy all the time?
Mm-hmm. She like had to bring it up like right immediately, like discuss Etsy terrariums and how many terrariums. Like she conveniently knew off the top of her head how many terrariums were in Etsy and was just prepared for that. Like,
I know that's her job, but it's so obviously marketing. I find this subtlety. I'm a big fan of subtlety, and I know that on a show like this, it's hard to convey that. But
honestly, I would rather have product placement from Etsy and see other makers' takes on terrariums than have her like weirdly like shoehorn in stuff about Etsy and her knowledge of trends. Like it's a weird thing to me. Like, and this is just another thing. I don't even get why we're talking about trends with this show.
Right.
It's weird to me. But whatever, just have them do crafts. Like I don't get the need to talk about trends. But
so the other thing I was going to add, I do have a theory and a prediction. So you know how Amy Poehler's whole role is like, I don't know crafts. What's a hammer? She had a line in this episode, something about how like watching all these people make stuff kind of makes you want to make stuff. I have a sneaking suspicion that throughout the course of the rest of the episodes, she is going to start taking on her own project, and she's going to be like the triumphant maker in the end who DIYs something.
Like as part of the show?
Yeah, I think I'd be curious to see if she takes on. I know that doesn't like fit with the competition, but as far as like the aside banter and the host thing, I wonder if like her overarching narrative is, I don't know what crafts are, and she's like the every person who doesn't do crafts, but then decides to take it on, being inspired by every show. Anyway, that's my theory. I'm just going to put that out there, and we'll see how events unfold.
My theory is Robert wins and takes it all. That's my theory.
Are you biased though?
I mean, just from looking at the competition and what's there, unless he really like makes a big mistake of some kind, a finger gets chopped off. I mean, there's.
Wait, has Robert posted any photos of his hands on Instagram since he did this?
Start being internet detectives. No, I really think that like he's poised to take it all. I just know him to be such like an immaculately, thorough person when he makes and he crafts, and I think he just has such like elevated taste. I can't, it's very hard for me to see him not at least being in the very end. So
yeah. I do think Jo she's the interior designer, right? I think she might give him a run for his money.
Yeah, totally.
But
yeah, her pool noodle rainbow was super cute.
Yeah.
That was her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she had a really good terrarium.
Yeah. But also that like the stuff just magically appears on that show. Like the holder for the pool noodles just like appeared. Like it was just there. Like it's just kind of like a weird, that's the one, that's my thing is all.
The brackets that Robert used for his fort to hold together his dome, he did not make those. Those were prefab. Things
just appear on the show, and it's magic. I know. Anyways.
I feel like we could do a whole episode just talking about making it, Sharon.
This is not what you came here for, though, folks. I get it. You came here for amazing tips on customer service and things to think about. So, start us off, Isaac.
All right. Well, before we get into we're talking about navigating customer service and the labyrinth that is. We did a couple months back, we did a YHB TV episode called The Customer Isn't Always Right. And conveniently, we republished that as a podcast episode this morning. So if you want just the audio version, you can go check that out. That's a good, it's similar but different than what we're talking about today in that in that particular episode, we talked a little bit about why the customer may not always be right and some ways that you can address that. So it's a little more like troubleshooting issues. Today, we want to talk a little bit more broadly about customer service in general. And the other resource that Sharon threw in the chat was a blog that Lizzie May from Forgotten Cotton.
I got excited and put it in before you said it.
There's cool.
I thought that's what you were going to say.
Anyway, Lizzie May from Forgotten Cotton wrote this blog post for us a while back, and we also felt like it was relevant. So if you want to check that out, please do as well. So I guess first of all, I want to clear this up and just answer what might seem like a stupid question, but what is a customer? And I think that's an important distinction to make because a customer is somebody who has actually bought something from you. Yeah. Not someone who's
perhaps in the process of even buying something.
Yeah. But not somebody who's just come to you out of the blue and is like that. That's not customer service when you're dealing with people who haven't bought yet. That's sales. It's related to marketing. And there are some principles that are shared between them, but one thing we wanted to make sure you understood is that when we're talking about customer service, we're talking about people who have actually bought your products or who are about to buy your products, who are in the process of it, because that's where customer service actually starts to happen.
Yeah. And I think that's important because I think, any old person who just walks into your booth, you have to sort of think about them differently than somebody who's actually purchased from you. Like somebody who's purchased from you is like, has investment in you that a person who has not, and you sort of owe them different things.
Yeah, for sure. I think customer service is about, from a big picture standpoint, it's about delivering an excellent experience. I think it's about encouraging repeat business. That's kind of the goal of it, is like doing what you can to bring them back for more and to generate referrals or reviews or recommendations, any kind of word of mouth that will help bolster your business. Those are the three big reasons why customer service is so important.
Yeah. One of the things that Isaac has talked about in dealing with customer service before with his own business, and then also I think we've had people talk about this too, just in the course of our events and in our Facebook group and everything, is that it can be very helpful to create a separate persona if you need to distance yourself from certain escalating issues or difficult emotional issues with a customer, which is, often an email address with a different name. Sometimes people find that a different gender helps. A lot of times, it can go either way. But, I know people that are husband and wife teams that are like, oh, my husband's going to talk to you, and they just hop on their husband's email. And there's just say the same thing they would before, and whatever. It is what it is sometimes, guys. Like, you can be upset with it, but this is just sometimes how you have to deal with and treat people in order to like get the best outcomes for yourself.
Yeah, I think in addition to creating a separate persona if need be, I think it's also, you can also kind of separate yourself by like physically moving yourself from maker to customer service. And that can look a few different ways. Like I'm thinking like having a dedicated customer service time instead of like trying to do it while you're trying to fulfill orders or make something, or like just kind of compartmentalize, like literally compartmentalize customer service to focus your brain just on that when that's what all you should be focusing on, instead of trying to multitask.
I think that's one of those good ways about like putting on like a CEO hat and thinking like, okay, if my company was bigger, how would I handle this? What department would get referred to this? Even if you don't have all of those people in place yet, you can pretend to be those people. You can say, okay, if my company was larger and I was running it like a big company, I would refer to this department, then it would escalate to that department, and then we would treat it this way or that way. And you can just implement your own things with yourself, even if it's just you. But obviously, like sometimes just farming out that and getting people to help you with that can also be a huge benefit too.
Yeah. I have always been a huge fan of canned responses. I do a lot of customer support for my husband's business, and this is, we talked about this before, but like anytime, I think Katie Hunt was the one who suggested this on a podcast of hers. Anytime you have the same question asked twice, that's your sign that you should have a canned response for it, because that's going to save you time and it's going to save you money. Because you already have the answer in place. Your time is money, but also that helps you reinforce policies and answer things consistently so that you're dealing with your customers consistently. The big caveat that I would give to that is canned responses are great, but make sure you read them after you paste them into the email and send them, or before you send them, to make sure that they're accurate and that they're actually addressing the issue at hand. So lean on them as a template, but make sure you are tweaking and adjusting things to be relevant to what that person's issue is.
I've definitely had this, and I'm going to call out MailChimp here. I've had it where MailChimp definitely did this with me one time, where like I brought up an issue. I explained I already knew certain problem solving things about the issue that I had tried and still was having this issue. And they like sent me their canned response on the issue, which was like, I just told you I tried all this stuff. And anyways, but make sure you're listening to what they're saying.
Exactly. I think that's one of the biggest frustrations that people have with customer support, with contacting customer support, is that they feel like support isn't listening, that they aren't paying attention to what the words that they're saying. And so the flip side of that is you want to make sure that you are, absolutely. And canned responses can definitely help you, but you don't want to use them at the expense of listening to your customer.
Yeah. And I think it's easy because you can get the same sort of question over and over again. And so when someone asks you a question that's similar, but not the same, and you give them the same answer, that can lead to a lot of frustration on their end. So, ask clarifying questions of them if you're kind of not sure what they're asking. I think that's always helpful too.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Another one is, I think, give people the benefit of the doubt. Which I think can be kind of tricky. We would caveat this with like, be smart, but don't be a jerk, basically, about it. In my dealings with, people that have run restaurants and helping them with, PR and marketing, I feel like there is a tendency for them to feel like everyone is just there trying to get a free meal. Which I get. Like, there's definitely in some ways the rise of the a-hole diner currently. Thank you, Yelp, and your elites. But I think that, and not everyone deserves, a free something. But I think I think a lot of sort of, pain can be avoided if you just kind of accommodate and quickly respond and refund to them, or do whatever it takes to solve the problem. Especially if it's like a low dollar item, if it's not going to cost you a lot to easily rectify it and, help them, then you should, I think. Obviously this sort of changes, custom stuff changes things, which I think we recently did a post on JOMO, Joy of Missing Out, in our Facebook group. And I think a lot of people talked about that their joy of missing out was they were excited to be missing out on custom orders, which I think tells you something about how difficult they can be. So obviously things like that can be different when you're kind of going in that direction. But I think in general, assume good faith from people, and assume that anything that they're kind of frustrated with you about is like, or being weird about, is just an overall frustration with the situation, and maybe even a frustration with themselves, and they're kind of, lashing out at you. So.
For sure. So when you think about customer service, what we want you to do is consider not just reactive customer service and responding to people who approach you, but also being proactive with your customer service. And that takes a little bit different shape than answering questions or troubleshooting issues or responding to complaints. Proactive customer service are things that you're doing just to be nice to your customer, kind of that above and beyond level of service. And I think we've all at some point in our lives experienced this kind of proactive customer service. Usually that's what we tend to define as great customer service. It's not that I was dealt with adequately when I went to them with a problem. It's that I had a fantastic experience shopping at this store or going to this restaurant or whatever it is, because this person went out of their way. So some things that you can do to be proactive, not necessarily like discounting, but things that you can do as a bonus. So I know a lot of makers throw in little extra gifts or samples with their orders. Those are great things to do. You could do a discount on a future purchase, but that's a little more like, it's kind of obvious what your goal is on that, which is to get them to reorder from the customer's perspective. So think about ways that you can be nice to your customers in a way that they may not expect, and that doesn't directly net a benefit for you.
Yeah. And I think, or explicitly net a benefit. I think, obviously most of the stuff will net a benefit for you. I think following up and asking them, if they had questions or feedback, or if they're satisfied with their orders, after, at some point, if you have some kind of product that might be a little bit complicated or different or whatever, and you need to give them tips on either caring for it or whatever, like that can also just be helpful. Anything that's helpful to the customer after the purchase, to help them enjoy the product more and to let them know that you cared about their satisfaction, I think is great.
Yeah. I like checking in on things like, did you like it? Or if it was a gift, like, how did they like it? What did they think?
Yep. And not everyone's going to answer you, but even just know that, like, if they don't have time to respond to you, they usually feel like, okay, I feel like they at least care, that this is, someone with thought in their business, even if I don't have time to give them feedback.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So when it comes to actual communication with your customers on a customer service level, we want you to make sure that you are timely in your responses. You don't have to offer instant chat or text messaging, although I know that there are some people who do that kind of thing to great benefit to their business. But you should be very responsive. When it comes to customer service, especially if somebody is irritated, you can often nip that panic in the bud by getting out in front of any issues, by responding very quickly. And I know that part of this is egged on by instant support offered by a lot of big companies. And so there's a balance between customers' expectations of what support should look like versus what you can literally or realistically offer to them. But if you're responsive and you're consistent about that, then that's going to go a long way toward resolving their issue in a way that leaves you both satisfied.
I think there can be sometimes avoidance where you want to get out of uncomfortable situations, or you're like super eager to like overly respond, I think sometimes, and just sort of, trying to be as even keeled and all of that as possible. And I think being timely really avoids people just like flipping out on their own.
Yeah. And I think
obviously one man's timely is another man's too late, but
yeah, I think you brought up another good point though, Sharon, which is the tricky part is not being flippant or knee-jerk in your responses and making sure that you're still putting on that customer service hat and that you're taking the time to listen to the customer and figure out what they want before you respond, but still doing so in a way that is really, really quick. I mean, and I would say like if a customer reaches out to you, 24 hours is a good time limit to put on responding to them.
yeah, for sure.
You could do it faster if you want. It's up to you. And of course, the tricky part, and I've experienced this myself doing customer service for an app, is that if you respond immediately and then they reply and then you respond again really quickly, suddenly you set an expectation that you're sitting there at your computer waiting for them to respond to you. And then they can get really irritated if it takes you another day to get back to them the third time. So there's a balance there. So just be aware that you don't want to let your response time set expectations poorly. So that's why it should be consistent. If you are like, okay, I'm going to respond to any customer service issues once a day at, in the morning or something like that, that's nice and consistent, and you can approach it from there. Yeah,
totally. The last one is to not automatically give them the world, which I think there's a double-edged sword on that, which is I think it can be really easy to just assume that they want a refund in everything, and they want, sometimes there's ways to resolve this if you put in the effort to have it not cost you a lot. Obviously, I think there's bigger companies that can just be like, oh, well, we don't really care. I feel like Amazon does that a lot. We don't care why you're returning this. Really, we'll just credit you back if you send us in the stuff. But I think in general, there's ways, when you're a smaller business, that you want to avoid sort of overly compensating someone. At the same time, sometimes it's just worth giving somebody a credit or whatever to just get them, if it's easy enough to just get them off your back.
Yeah, I think it all depends on how irritated or angry they might be, or what the actual issue is. If you're dealing with something damaged in shipping, that's going to be a different approach than, oh, the color's not quite what I wanted, right? So it's highly contextual, but I think the important thing to know is that you don't have to bend over backwards and go to the extreme in resolving it if something else is perfectly acceptable. I think that's part of the conversation that you have to have with them. And usually I think a customer will sometimes indicate or imply what they're looking for as a solution. And so if you can start to read between the lines, then that might help you get some context there and figure out what the best option is.
Yeah. It's hard, I think, because like I said, Amazon is someplace, and a lot of online stores now just like will refund you once you've returned the product, sort of no questions asked. And or even, I guess, large chain brick and mortar stores too. And that can be very hard to offer an identical policy as a small business, because you feel like you're kind of, really losing a lot there. And that, that those can be harder to absorb. Obviously, I think that is, in talking about price though, that is something you should always be considering too, that you're going to have a certain amount of returns or damage or things where you're going to have to, return back to the customer. I'm forgetting the word for that, but anyways, there's a certain amount of loss there that you have to sort of accept. And so I think smartly building into your price where you don't feel like, so you should, when a customer has been, wronged, whether accidentally by you or whatnot, you should feel comfortable enough to be completely generous with them in your business setup, and to be stingy with them is, obviously something that is your failing and not the customer's failing at that point. So, yeah.
I have nothing more to add.
Yeah, I had something more to add on that, and there was like a flip to that thought, and I can't remember it. It's escaped my brain. But I definitely think that there's a lot more resolution, and I think when you're a small handmade business, you have a lot more chance to come across as a human with them and interact with them as a human, whereas somebody else who's customer service and might feel standoffish to them. I think you do have that opportunity that they can feel like there is a human touch there. And I also think that in navigating all of this is like, you just have to accept there's a certain percentage of people who have bought from you that are just never going to be satisfied. And it's because they're never satisfied with anything in their life. And it's okay. Because you cannot please everyone all of the time. And that's just how life goes. But I definitely think that, this is what I was going to say too, is if you notice that there is a consistent theme with a certain, problem that you have, obviously shipping is something you can't really control yourself, and sort of have to navigate that differently. But like, if you notice that there's a consistent theme to your product where people are unhappy with, a clasp, it tarnishes at a certain point that it shouldn't, or whatever is going on that people seem to be complaining about, and it's, a regular thing, I think that's when you start to examine, okay, maybe I need to change something with the product or how I deal with this, or how I advertise and I'm upfront with people about it. Because I think that sometimes the stuff is telling you that there's actually something wrong going on. So, and you might actually need to fix that.
Yeah, agreed. Well, I think that's all we have. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat or click on the Ask a Question button. I think to sum up, I would say that not every customer is like the Goblin King. Not every customer has stolen your baby brother. But there are definitely customers that may behave like crazy Muppet monsters in the Labyrinth. So I think if you take the approach of paying attention and listening and doing what you can to be proactive and responsive and consistent with your customer service, I think that will put you steps ahead of most people who may not know exactly what they're doing. And that'll get you closer to getting to the Labyrinth. And then you'll get your own crystal ball. And I'm going to run out of metaphors here. And you get your little baby brother back, and then everything will be hunky-dory.
This is true. All right. Next week in our 80s theme movies, we promise it will not be as sad, but we're doing Stand By Me, creating a network of support. So, yes.
I just have to add, I've not seen Stand By Me, and I was Googling it earlier, and I was like, man, Will Wheaton, River Phoenix, and what's his? Oh, Corey Feldman. Like, what? And it's based in Oregon. How have I never seen this movie, Sharon?
I don't know.
I'm gonna have to watch it this week, and then we can come up with some like solid analogies. And it's based off of a Stephen King book. That's the other thing.
Yeah. It's sort of this very interesting, I guess, trifecta or, whatever of notable pop culture figures together. And the interesting thing is like how interesting it is that like all of these people for the most part are still somewhat relevant. Corey Feldman iffy, but
well, I don't know. He was in that music video for Rebecca Black.
Oh, well, finger on the pulse of relativity right there. Anyways, Stand By Me. If you haven't watched it, it's good. Just prepare yourself. So.
And we will also be back with more hot takes on episode 3 of Making It.
Yes. If you're not into the hot takes, then maybe just come in a few minutes later until we're done with that. So, all right. Thanks so much for being with us, guys. We really appreciate it. Have a great week. If you haven't already, we'll see you in the Facebook group if you have any questions. See you later, guys.
Bye.
Bye.